The current Supreme Court Justice, here at the Political Minute with Colin Dawson. Looking at how things could go with the selection of the Supreme Court Justice, okay, a black woman. You said he'd put a black woman on there. There's very many people out there that I thought were very qualified. I've looked over everything else way back in the day. Didn't really keep up. This will be the last, probably, presidential group or anything else of nominees that where I can be like, I know a little bit of inside stuff. It's not like I know what happened in the back rooms, but I'm familiar with their cases. Some certain things they did, more than just the child pornography or other things, and some of the things psychologically that they have. I know one is always supposed to look about how to have more than whatever it is of the president there and being like, I am totally conservative. I am totally this. I'm a civilian. I'm really not anything. Technically, I could say, looking at everything, got to deal with what you got to deal with and deal with whatever's coming up on the lists that are very short. Okay? Well, here. I always looked at with the judge nominations that came out going Kruiger. Ain't crazy about it, but I think should have been a unifier of the entire nation and everything else. It would have been something that would have been across the nation style of government, someone that looked at all the avenues and aspects out there, and basically I mentioned it here with one person. They go, you're a British colonial supervisor or something else like that, because, Kruiger, ain't that from British Africa? And it's like, okay. And they'd be like, no, you need to choose Jackson. See, he was just racist to us, trying to recolonize the whole place. You need to go choose Jackson. Well, that's because she's with Michael Jackson, his family, and you all need to be learning to have people having sex sooner. Probably some 16-year-old statutory rape. Now I have Jackson on. I think that's basically the way the politics run nowadays. Looking at it from a complete, specific, everything else out there, over whatever it is, with people calling people names and saying whatever and saying you're not really this and to some sort of thing, and it's like, well, it was the extreme generation coming in. Jackson, I think, is very authoritative. I think that if she becomes, which I do believe she will become, the Chief Justice, that she may actually lead to a dictatorial situation in the United States whenever that comes up for her. I think that she really, truly could be the Chief Justice. She is very low-key on everything, has very non-muted opinions. I think she, with the child pornography case, there was a whole bunch of backroom deals, which from her generation basically being very close to mine, this is where the Supreme Court justices almost will be the same age as me going in. And I look at it that she, and even Amy in a way, hearken all the backroom deals of World War I and World War II, where we would have executed people. But instead, we gave them like these huge packages of eternal blanket immunity for their family and stuff like that. Where I think that any one of the other judges would have made things. Well, I don't think Kruiger would have been a good pick for like execution or something else like that. There's 2 or 3 other judges that I looked at in the pool that I'm going, they'd be more for like hanging them out to dry. Kruiger would have made a way for unified law across the USA. Maybe in a way not been into that, because with Jackson I see a lot of military judicial system, a lot of military good stuff, which is really good because we had 20 years of war, and basically this war encompasses all the way back since it's a Monroe not a Monroe Doctrine, a Dwight D. Eisenhower doctrine, and goes all the way back to World War II fascism. So I think she will have her work cut out for her if she is there. But yet at the same time, I think that due to her military sounding, and it's just a huge thing that's from all of her psychology stuff and everything else way back when, that I go, she could possibly make some rulings that make the presidency superior in a way over the court and the legislative branch. She could make something to where there would be a break from a break from the Continental Congress and what it laid down. Then it dissolved itself, so it could never take away its checks and balances government, even if they participate in it. The people can always add stuff to the Constitution and take away from it and everything else. Do I think she'd really stop that process? No. I think that she might actually educate people into that process. But I can't stand the whole situation over just the fact that she may end up with her military looking at, and she doesn't come from the JAG, I understand, but there is a very strong central power situation in all of her judicial situations, and a backroom deal that seems like goes on. Like the guy that had the pornography, I could see them going, okay, you got 90 days in jail as soon as you're out, because at 90 days you can still work with the feds. You can still work with the military. And see, that's basically like that court case is terrorism, because his stuff came from outside of the United States in like its originality and the going all the way back, which was very, hardcore things with like 10 and 8-year-old boys, homosexual. So he's working with the people there, and there's nothing that can stop him from working with anyone else, and he served 90 days in general population as a known pedophile conviction. With this being said, he didn't have it easy in those 90 days. Yes, he's working with the feds for so long and basically getting an expenditure job with them to track down these people. That's probably way longer than his prison sentence is. He's probably got an easy situation for that. But yet at the same time, the fact that she cannot be grilled over that there and is not open with that leaves the kind of like all this secret court stuff that comes up in the Masonic lodges and local trials around here that were basically how they did lynch mobs back before, and there's just a new way to do it. And they don't target black people necessarily here because of all the World War II situations. So it's like, so long as you keep to your own racial color spectrum and your forearms match, it's okay. That seems like a plus, but at the same time, I'm going, anytime in an open, of the people, by the people, for the people, and the more secret stuff you bring in, you always have the $500 hammer days and the $1,000 toilet seats and everything else, and Black Ops, Iran-Contra. So, in and of itself, that's the only thing that I look at. I look at her as being very strong for the military, very competent and capable in the military trial system, but yet at the same time, would it bring too much power to the presidency from the court system when we are still basically stopping international situations over the Eisenhower doctrine? We stopped supporting the Monroe doctrine, saying we cannot help the rest of the Americas here, in case us not being an international person on the Mussolini front and the Third Reich front, now we may not be able to stop them if we deflect them from going and colonizing a smaller area like in the Caribbean or in Central America. We can't we aren't saying we are, but we're saying we're not going to make it our policy. So we're saying in a polite way, politically, we're not strong enough to have our obligations to the rest of the world, nor have our obligations to the Western Hemisphere and the Americas. And if we keep repealing back, the third strike is we can't have our obligations to our Caribbean and border allies like Mexico and Canada. China is not under the Monroe Doctrine. Even if there are people here. People argue and say anywhere that there's a border that the Americas go to, these are mostly propagandists from back in the day, from Mussolini's area, that constantly go on and say anything that borders the USA is part of the Americas, Africa, or any place else. And we don't look at the Native Americans or the natives of the Pacific that are part of the USA as Chinese or Japanese. Yes, there are immigrants that came there, but they are not considered the same. And we can say that they were lost slaves on another edition from the Americas and taken off in chains and other stuff, or under that which is religious slavery for religious purposes, which is in a way included in the First Amendment, and in a way they say is not included in the 13th Amendment, 14th, 15th, and everything else up through there. But yet at the same time, that's a big question for another time. Let me know in the comments section if you actually want to hear anything of that. I'd love to go into it, but I know it's a huge can of worms. And in a way, I don't really care if I make anybody mad. But going along with the Supreme Court situation, I do think that she will pass through. I think that what they don't like in the Republican area is backroom political deals that can never be made to the public is really what their problem is. If that comes out, that she could be used and they'd be doing domestic, since Biden wants to bring everything of the Monroe Doctrine and the Eisenhower Doctrine domestically to the USA and bring the fight here. If that happens and it backfires, the United States will just be a giant prison colony. And anything that comes near the borders, they'll just zap it, and they'll send random people in to kill off different groups of Nazi groups or anything else that threatens the Americas or the world. And with it, you can't have, in this type of society, as long as it's been the way it's been, you cannot have it over and over made to be ruled by only a small 2 or 3% at the top, like how they say other countries are. It'll be too destructive to it, and will just lead to constant overthrow. And it'll probably lead to overthrow between different factions that are Nazi affiliated, and making the presidency, the executive branch, so strong. Without the representation, the legislative branch, there can never be any independence or anything else remade to here. And without the judicial branch being its own strength and unifying everything and showing how things can go conservatively back to the beginning of America, representing what America was, the USA at the beginning of it, and then going through and showing liberality over how space science and future biochemistry and everything else has a place inside the United States in the legal situation and the checks and balances that we have. So then, how can we say that there is a judicial person that answers that question. The main question needs to be said and asked. Not Roe versus Wade, not can we get lifers in there, abortionists, gun rights, or anything else, and see how one can still hold to the beginning of it that there was this, and in liberality situations, is the general public able to have space lasers and shoot at each other? Or will they just be like the Simpsons at therapy? How can we move through and have a process for this? I know you'll say that's really legislation, but yet at the same time, legislation makes things within the law, as it is, or underneath the Constitution, as it now is, and underneath the branch of the executive. The executive can't really, through emergency powers, constantly tell the court, you'll rule how I say. Emergency powers. So long of that, one will then eventually find out they went past Hitler and hit Hirohito and are ruling like he did. And then they'll go past that and they'll look in the mirror and they'll just see a fat Mussolini looking back at them. And no, I don't look anything like him. But with everything and all things considered, there's my take on the new Supreme Court Justice and the questions that should be asked and answered. Colin James Dawson, over and out.